I bring this meeting to order. Welcome to our June 22nd meeting. Please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome to everyone, and I will hear a motion on the agenda that you have in front of you.
I move we approve the agenda as written here.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. And we're going to go right on to public comment, and I assume this is you too. Lori Blair, and Lonnie Blair,
Yeah, Lonnie.
and then Lonnie Blair again.
Uh-huh.
And
Wait a second.
the
Two
time,
Lonnies?
Yeah.
It's
Two
not
Lonnies.
every day that I find one Lonnie.
but there's, this is Lonnie
I'm
also.
Lonnie.
Right.
So, but I'm sure you know the 3-minute time constraint on presenting, but go ahead and you can come up to the.
Well, I have two subjects.
Oh, good. I didn't know who was Lonnie here, but hello, Lonnie.
So I guess I want to start out from a quote, with a quote. We the people are absolutely entitled to ask questions of those who lead us or seek to lead us. Asking questions is not an attack on a person, it's simply asking questions. Why would anybody interpret asking questions as an attack on a person unless they fear the answers to the questions? We the people are entitled to ask questions to all who lead us or seek to lead us. And we the people are entitled to direct answers to our questions. If a person is not willing to ask questions and provide answers to them, that person is not fit to lead we the people. And that's a quote by Lynn Wood. I thought that fit perfectly with what I'm going to lead into today. Over a year ago, I came to you guys with an issue of porn on the bus, and then it rolled into porn in the schools on their Chromebooks. I spoke to Tom several times about this issue. He said he'd get back to me. Carrie Kelly, Mr. Carrie, you came up to me at the end of last meeting, almost over a year ago, and said that you guys would get back to me with answers. I waited, contacted Tom again, no answer, went to his office, still sat down with him, still got no answers on that. I even suggested, well, this is in regard to phones on the bus. Why people are giving their kindergartners phones on the bus, I have no clue. But I suggested that a basket, kids know their phones, believe me. They can put their phones in a basket as they get on the bus, take them off when they get off the bus. There's no reason they should be passing around their phones with pornographic material on it and exposing my children to that and everybody else's children, K through 12, on the buses. That's just insane. I spoke to James Kohler about it. He's a bus transportation administrator. And he ended up telling me after 4 or 5 different phone calls that it is at the discretion of each bus driver. So I'm leaving my kids on the bus, depending on what that bus driver's morals are, completely up to their discretion. The cameras on the bus do not capture people hiding their phones and sneaking in below the level. It's still an issue, it's ongoing, still happening. Chromebooks in school. I went to see Casey McLaughlin, SMS principal. Wouldn't even give me the time. Well, I sat in his office with him. He refused to even look at the proof. I pulled him up on the computer, over 100 sites visited on a Chromebook, okay? So I called a meeting with all of my son's teachers. Sat in a room with them, showed them, told them a few. Each one of them, oh, not in my class, from every single one of them. But I could show them minute by minute, I'm literally minute by minute, hundreds of sites visited with these Chromebooks. My kids do not have internet at home. If we do access internet for school, it's 100% supervised. And
Lonnie,
it's not,
and that's 3 minutes on that topic, but if you
Well,
just want to run
I'm-
6 minutes up for whatever.
I'm almost
Okay,
done.
okay.
I am not done yet. And I'm the only one on the thing, so. So, after speaking, there's just I still haven't got an answer from you guys. I'd like an answer. Can anybody have an answer? Anything wrong with the basket on the bus? Coming and going?
Mm-hmm.
Tom?
So we'll
Anybody?
absolutely, I know that last time you spoke with us, you were aware that this is your opportunity to speak to us, but it's not part of our agenda, so we don't actually have it as an agendized item and we can't address on it, but I'm putting it on our agenda in the future. Thank you, though, Lonnie.
That was over a year ago. This is
I know.
over a year ago, and I still have no answers, and it's still happening.
And I appreciate that.
I'll be glad to visit with you outside this meeting.
Okay,
And that's the same thing I heard last year.
Well,
okay.
That's insane. Okay. Okay, with Chromebooks. Okay, another issue is the COVID stuff. My son, my youngest son, used to love school, and I know I'm not the only parent out there with this stuff going on. Came home crying every single day from school. What's the problem? Well, he's wearing a mask or he's wearing a shield. He's got asthma. No doctor would write a note, which is baloney. It's unsafe and unhealthy for my child to wear something like that, let alone be encased in, their little prison around their desk, and circles on the floor where he would get screamed and yelled at on a daily basis by both his teacher and anybody else around if he leaned down to get a pencil that dropped and his desk scooted forward and it moved out of the circle. How can my child concentrate at all when all day long, the few hours they were in school, he's being harassed about putting his shield on before he gets and walks 5 feet to the bathroom, when he's got the thing around his desk, or leaning down to pick up a pencil. And then I get a call that my son has been quarantined for 14 days because everybody on the playground, or whatever staff was on the playground, watched my son be next to a group of boys, which is okay, that for close to 15 minutes. So the next day, or the day before that, one of those kids came back COVID positive. Mm-hmm. So that is ridiculous, okay? I tried to talk to the principal about that, Kathy Burgett, and she couldn't tell me at the time why my son was being quarantined for 14 days. She stood there and went ooh and ah and said that I said they're wearing shields, they're outside, this is ridiculous. Nobody walked up and said, hey boys, why don't you separate a little, do a little distancing? Nobody. They stood there and watched them and then chastised him for it. Seriously? Come on. We are doing so much damage to our kids, it's not even funny. We all know this world is demonic and a mess. I go to the middle school, or my kids get chastised for bringing their Bibles in their backpacks to school, both elementary and middle school. And then I walk to the middle school to have a talk with the teachers, and all over is satanic Harry Potter wizardry posters, bigger than I am. All over the walls, all over the halls. So I asked one of the teachers, are you guys reading Harry Potter? Oh no. Well then why are the posters all over the school? Really? Can't they pick something less evil and satanic than that? This is good versus evil going on in our world right now, our world. And we need to take this seriously, and we need to stop it, because our children are the next generation. We need to protect them, we need to guard them, and step up for them, because they have constitutional rights, we have constitutional rights, and they are being stepped all over right and left in every organization in this world. And it needs to come to a stop. And it's got to start somewhere. So when will I hear back from anybody on any of these issues?
I can call you tomorrow,
Okay.
and we can set up a meeting and go review what we reviewed before and the conversation you had with Mr. Kaler. So.
On the phone, the porn?
Correct, the bus.
Okay, and what about the porn in schools on their Chromebooks?
We can address all of that in our filtering system.
And the posters in schools?
I would get our IT director some of this is new information to me, and our filtering system is sufficient.
She said it's not
Okay,
sufficient.
well, I'll contact you tomorrow, set an appointment up.
This has went on for over
Yeah.
a year.
Yeah.
And you guys have done nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. What are you doing to these kids?
Thank you, though, for bringing it to our attention. And I'm sorry that you felt like you got ignored a year ago. So we're going to move on to administrative facilities report from Matt Deal.
Hi, thank you for having me back again.
Yeah?
I'll be reviewing 2 sites tonight. This is a review of the 2018 facility evaluation done by Longwell Trapp Architects and Coleman Engineering. So Hope Elementary was constructed in 1998. The school is in good shape and serviceable, has a population of 98 students. It isn't without ADA issues. There are some ADA issues in the building, fixture heights and things like that, as ADA rules have evolved since, in past over 30 years. Some of that has fallen out of compliance.
Yeah.
In the first section, they said the parking lots weren't converted. They are converted to LED. Our sewer system is on a municipal system to Ellsport Bay. We do have a public drinking water system at the school. The water is treated for corrosion. The water untreated has a low pH, which can be corrosive to the pipes. And so it's treated for corrosion and chlorinated. And then there's a big contact loop out in the field that so the chlorine is in the water long enough to have contact time before it comes in the building. There's some little bit issues with drainage on the playground. Some of the playground tends to slope back towards the school a little bit and can be pretty icy in the winter time. It's not ideal that there isn't separated parent drop-off from bus drop-off. In new schools, they really look to separate those. Hope is single, but it does function. The school is really short on parking when there's events. That could be a real challenge. School has much better ventilation than the schools we've covered up to this point, because it was built in '88 instead of the 50s or 60s. A couple of the air handlers were noisy. The bearings have been replaced now. Those do sound better. I know Mr. Decker had one of those units right outside his office. I think part of it is just by design, they're just kind of noisy units, and just right adjacent to the classroom, so that's not ideal. The gymnasium carpet is always interesting. It's an orange color. It's the original, still in very good condition. It was actually like orange in color to look like wood, as close as they could get to look like wood. But it is carpet. It's kind of a multi-purpose room. So it's just an interesting piece. The intercom system is outdated and really struggles to function. That we're working on upgrading this summer. So we've purchased the components, and between district maintenance and IT folks will be getting that installed. And then IT contracts a little bit on the programming at the final piece to get that up and running. The fire alarm does need to be upgraded, but it is functional. And that's Hope Elementary. Any questions on that one? It's a beautiful setting. Anybody's never been there,
Yeah, it is.
probably one of the better settings in I would say it's got to be one of the best settings anywhere in an elementary school. I'll move on to Kootenai Elementary.
Okay.
The enrollment I looked up from the end of this school year was 371. That school was built in 1987. with the recent big additions in 2010.
Right.
That site is really in good shape, has separated parent and bus drop-off. It's got really good fencing around the playground. Ventilation-wise, it's in very good condition. That's all been replaced in 2010. That school is in great shape. The recommendation for that school, and this would probably hold true in almost every school, when you look at safety and security, some sort of vestibule where people come into, and then, visitors, and then they can't physically enter the rest of the school without some sort of locked vestibule. So that's one recommendation. But they had, that would have been recommended at
All of them.
every school was
Yeah.
talked about.
Yeah.
But I'm looking a little harder for things to talk about at Kootenai, so I got to that one.
How many?
As student growth happens, we do have 4 portable classrooms, and until this year, that school was really bursting at the seams. So that's probably the biggest issue with Kootenai is going to be capacity, I would guess,
Yeah.
with all the growth out that way.
Yeah.
But it's a beautiful school.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions on those two?
No, I appreciate the updates from you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And moving on, I will hear a motion for consent agenda.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second?
Okay. And there is one comment in the HR report in the consent agenda. There is one typo. Ronald Mason happens to be the new athletic director at Clark Fork High School. The report says Mason Jones, who's a separate teacher. So that is the adjustment on HR report, is that you would need to amend the HR report in the consent agenda to read Ronald Mason as the new athletic director at Clark Fork High School. So if I could hear a motion to approve that amended.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as amended
In the HR report.
in the HR report.
Second.
So the amended consent agenda is approved. Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed. So that motion passes with the amendment as noted. So we are going to move on to kind of the heart of our meeting tonight. And I welcome our CFO, Lisa Halls, to review our budget with us. Thank you, Lisa, for preparing this packet for us.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Let's see, I guess I'll start with saying that at the end of my presentation, this will require a motion to adopt the fiscal year 2021-2022 Lake Pomeroy School District budget as proposed and legally noticed. And we are required as a school district to bring a budget for the public and for it to be adopted by the school board annually. We are also required to post it on the district website, which we've done long before that requirement. And this budget document, which is posted on our website, is meant to be an executive summary where a reader could glean pertinent data points versus the document that we submit to the State Department of Education, which is 100 pages of numbers and general ledger accounts. The photographs here are contributed by our clerk of the board, and so thank you so much. The page numbers, I'll move through this content quickly, and just maybe you can hold your question until the end. The page numbers are in the top center. So page 1 tells the reader that we have elected a school board by zone, and gives the meeting schedule, and we have our annual meeting January 11th of 2022, which is required by law. On page 2, it tells you our schools and the grade configuration and the contact information. Below that is our central office administrators, and then our fiscal accountability team. Page 3 gives our principals. We do have several new administrative principal positions in the upcoming school year, and then our department director. And then it gives a paragraph of the district overview. It shares that we are one of the area's largest businesses. I think we are the largest employer in Boundary County, and our budget that's before you, annual budget is $46.6 million. We're projecting student enrollment to be around 3,800 students. That is notably up from this school year, where what's called fall enrollment came in at 3,499 students. We have an indefinite term supplemental maintenance and operation levy, which is $12.7 million. The State Department of Education is quite far behind in putting all of the school district data together, so they can only tell us last year we were ranked the 63rd of their 114 brick and mortar districts and maybe 53 charter districts on per pupil spending, which was about $9,000. Probably the most salient points that you'll take away from tonight's presentation is that in federal, state, and local grants, but really it's the federal component, we are going to spend $10.4 million. This just gives you a visual organizational chart about the structure of our school district, page 5. Page 6 starts the budget summary message, which is the content I would like to concentrate on tonight. So normally our budgeting cycle takes 6 to 9 months. This year fully, it started last July, and that's really attributable to the infusion of federal COVID-related dollars that we've talked all year about, known as ESSER E, SSER, 3 different ESSER funds, ESSER 1, 2, and 3. And we focus really on 4 main factors. I've mentioned that we have local property tax measure, which will be brand new July 1st, 2021. It's 36.2% of our general fund budget. Our general fund is the major operational fund. That's a governmental accounting term. And it's a fixed dollar amount. It's currently $12.7 million, and it will continue to be $12.7 million. The second component, we looked at state revenue and really what will the COVID trajectory look like. Those in charge at the state level for projecting state revenues, they had a hurdle of trying to project the state revenues during the COVID-19 pandemic, but very early on last fall, it was clear that Idaho's economic performance was actually leading the nation, and that they were already well above their fiscal year-end cash position, and they came in way over forecast. That's occurring as we speak now, and so they have a record budget surplus, and then like all public school districts in the nation, the state of Idaho also had an infusion of hundreds of millions of dollars through these 3 different ESSER packages. Third, we wanted to look at the federal revenue. Was Congress going to continue to appropriate federal relief funds? And of course, we started this last July, and we had the first COVID relief package in March of 2020. The second, December 30th of 2020, and the third in March of 2021. And each size package got larger. And there are very specific allowing spending criteria. We've discussed those and gone through those in prior board meetings. And in this fiscal budget that's being presented, we fully expended our ESSER 1 dollars, and we will be concurrently expending our ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 dollars. Finally, what's going to happen with student enrollment not only in the state, but in our district. We had a one-time drop in enrollment of about a little over 8% this year. Our administration did send out a targeted questionnaire to try to gauge the plan to return to school in September of 21, and largely we expect that our student enrollment will come in close to pre-pandemic count. And then always you have to structure a budget within whatever the spending parameters are, and I just can't say enough that the federal spending parameters on the COVID dollars are lengthy, and they are still forthcoming. There are very important pieces, particularly on the third package, the ESSER 3 dollars, that have not been released to the school district and the state. The State Department of Education is kind of continuing to scramble to get information out to the district. Ultimately, the Joint Finance Appropriation Committee increased the K-12 appropriation from fiscal year 21 to 22 by 3.8%. That's will translate to about an additional $326,000 for us over this year's current state appropriation. But I did mention in the last board meeting that at the very last minute, on May 12th, again, 11 months into the fiscal cycle, the whole legislative session was very protracted and late coming and adopting the current fiscal year budget 11 months into the budget and the next year's fiscal budget. They added a provision that says if the appropriation has a negative variance, so as of June 30th, 2022, that means that all the school districts will have to basically self-fund that variance. And the K-12 appropriation, very candidly, has been perennially under budget. And there are three major components to that: transportation, the student count, and something called the Advanced Opportunity Program. And so I fully expect that the increase in the appropriation will be offset by this one-time provision, unless some kind of legislative action were to occur. And myself and a handful of others have been working very actively with the governor's office that's aware of what happened kind of like within one day in May. So our state appropriation is about 63% of our general fund budget. The other extraordinary thing I wanted to point out is that districts are in limbo. We are under a temporary rule from the State Board of Education on how we are paid. The rule says that we are paid on student enrollment. Antecedent to that rule, which was passed last November, we have always been paid on average daily attendance, and it's that component alone that is the largest driver in how all the other funding formula components function.
Right.
I did want to point out, I have a typo that what's called the career ladder, which is how the teaching certified staff are funded or reimbursed to a certain extent. That drives the largest line item in the state appropriation. The state appropriation next year is $2.1 billion, and it accounts for $1 billion. And it's correct on the screen, but in the board's handout, I had a comma not appearing. So I mentioned that we think we will return to pre-pandemic student levels. On page 9, there's a visual chart of our historic enrollment. We will spend in combination of ESSER 1 and ESSER 2 dollars, $5.5 million. All the ESSER packages now that are in place for us expire September 30th of 2024. We have, as a district, mapped out how we intend to spend those dollars within the allowable parameters. We also anticipate that our what's called fund balance at the end of this fiscal year will be about $9.1 million. And we did put on hiatus transferring money into our plant fund, and we are going to do that in this proposed budget of $200,000. We also, for the first time as a district, have no debt obligation, and we will be spending out of our general fund about $253,000 in capital items, but more poignantly and highly unusual, we will be spending about $2.2 million, pending board action on the next agenda item tonight, out of ESSER 3 funds for capital improvements that are concentrated on HVAC upgrades. We also have some technology and bus acquisition in there. This is the visual enrollment. You can see this big drop from 3,800 to the 3,500 this year. This compares on the left-hand side. Again, the State Department is behind, so this is fiscal year 20 statewide data. On the top for our general fund, and on the bottom is all the funds. And the most important number here is this. Here, what we are going to be spending on capital, $2.4 million compared to about $800,000 this year. That percentage for us normally hovers around less than 1% of our overall budget, and now you can see it's 5.4%. And that's because we don't have a plant levy and we don't have a bond. And, those are really the funding mechanisms in the state of Idaho for capital improvement.
Yep.
This just shows you what's the fund balance as it jumps up this year because of some governor corona relief dollars, about $1.2 million, and some other things that did not come to fruition that because of the infusion of ESSER 1 dollars, we've been able to build up our fund balance. This is page 13, the State Department of Education, after all the audits are due in November, for each district prepares this one-page summary. This shows you the summary for the fiscal year 20 that closed last June. This is the legal document that every public entity must in this format publish. In the fourth column, it shows you the proposed budget for our general fund, and in the eighth column, our proposed budget for all the other funds. And again, what differentiates the fiscal year we're in to the next fiscal year is because of these ESSER dollars, you can see in staffing and in capital improvement and in purchase services, we are going to be spending millions more. So the bottom $10.4 million versus $4.3 million this year.
Right.
Then the rest of the document first goes through the different programs in the general fund, and what you want to attenuate to is there are particularly allowable expenses in ESSER 2 and ESSER 3. You are allowed to supplant, so things that you are currently spending but are allowable can go to ESSER 3, and so particularly in the Department of Special Education and in the counseling department, we have shifted staff into those programs. And then starting on page 19, we get into the federal funds, and you'll see here ESSER 3. Right, there was no ESSER 3 this year, and we will be anticipating to spend $2.9 million in ESSER 3. And on the top of page 20, ESSER 2, again, no ESSER 2 dollars, and next year, or this year before you, $2.5 million. That's the full amount of ESSER 2. And
Yeah.
then we also have some additional ESSER dollars through the IDEA program, the special services, one-time dollars with a different timeline of $165,000, and that's going to be included in the next agenda item tonight. And then the only other thing I would share with you is the very final page. We're not required to do this. Our school district accounts for, on every level, our voter-approved indefinite, it will be the indefinite term maintenance and operations supplemental levy, and it just compares. You know, it's a flat amount. It's 12.7 this year, 12.7 next year. That concludes my remarks. Do you have any questions?
I do. So the question I have on, we're talking about two different things. The 2.2 million that's being invested in capital improvements. That is made up of 1.2 million in the bids that we're putting out, plus other.
Plus bus acquisition.
Okay, bus acquisition,
the
technology.
right,
Okay, so those are
right.
the other pieces that come up
Yes.
to 2.2.
Exactly.
And those funds are ESSER II dollars.
ESSER
By
3.
and large,
By and
not
large,
all of them.
not
Some
all
of
of
them
it.
are general fund, but
General
by
fund,
and
but
large,
a lot of
they're
ESSER
going to
II.
be ESSER 2 or ESSER 3.
I was going to say, on page 5 of our document here,
Yeah.
it appears that they are, page 8, I'm sorry. Page 8 of the document, second bullet point, the 2.2 in ESSER 3 fund for capital improvements, bus acquisition.
Okay.
Is that just ESSER 3 dollars?
I'm sorry, I have to go back to the
I
page.
know.
See.
We're kind
So
of
on
jumping
page
around.
8, say your question again, I'm so sorry.
Page 8, the second bullet talks about the 2.2.
So 2.2 is, and actually ESSER, all ESSER 3.
ESSER 3.
That's
and
ESSER
general-
3.
Yeah.
Some general fund,
Yeah.
but most
And
of
then the
it.
general fund is 253,000.
I got
Yeah.
it. My confusion came from
But
the rec for
tonight-
qualifications.
Yeah, that's,
I was going, okay.
Is
So,
a
I didn't
different
know if it
amount.
was-
That's not all.
That's not all. That's just part, okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are there other questions from the board? I know we've had this packet for a little while, so we had a chance to review it. Gary?
I want to talk about what you touched on, the enrollment versus the ADA.
Yeah.
Okay, the state board, during the pandemic, as an emergency measure, enacted the enrollment formula,
right.
which would expire, which we all hoped the legislature would make permanent, but they did not. So it was scheduled to expire 60 days after the legislature adjourns. Okay, the legislature has not officially adjourned. They have, what do you call it, suspended?
Sine die. So it was to expire when the legislature adjourned, not 60 days after, but the legislature is still in session.
The legislature is
The
still in
House is
session.
still in session.
And it doesn't appear that they're going to adjourn before the state fiscal year begins on July 1.
Right.
So are we still in the enrollment formula then?
So the final payment for fiscal year 21, which we're in, is July 15th, 21. And unless sine die occurs between now and July 15th, for the current fiscal year, we will be fully paid on enrollment. Moreover, if sine die does not occur, and in the absence of any additional state board actions, we still will be paid on enrollment until there is a change.
According to the Speaker of the Idaho House, they're reserving, the right to convene, but based on an emergency. So if we don't have a pandemic or a catastrophic forest fire and the state fails to reconvene, will we continue to be on the enrollment formula?
Right. In the absence of any legislative or state board action, we will continue to be paid on enrollment.
Yeah.
So that will go.
Which on the surface
So-
might
so it- so it's likely-
seem good, but the problem then is that the state appropriation of $2.1 billion is predicated on what's called a unit count or student estimate on average daily attendance. And average daily attendance is about 5% less than enrollment. So now you are already going to be woefully under in the appropriation, above and beyond, you know, I said where they're sort of perennially low, around $35 million. And what happens then, under what's called the protection provision, is that's also self-funded. So that means that all the school districts are going to bear kind of that cost. It gets very complicated.
Yeah.
So you're saying if with the enrollment formula, you know, school districts qualify for more funds than the state has available, then
And
there
we all
will be an
absorb 'em.
adjustment at the end.
Right, a negative adjustment to every single school district. Yes.
And
So
we will
conflating
know
with this
that.
other provision of, oh, one time now we are not going to go into the public education stabilization fund. So
So, okay, we have a fund, you know, we
But they're
have
not
a rainy
touching
day fund.
right, so,
It's there,
you
but you can't
know,
use it.
the state superintendent's office, the governor's office, certain legislators are acutely aware of these two very big issues, but it's,
And the other big variable is, we will know the first week of school, is what the statewide enrollment is.
right, the big districts, the Boise, the West Ada, the Nampa, because I'm in very regular contact with them, are still projecting a significant drop in enrollment next year.
So,
Unlike us.
so statewide.
Statewide, we are going to be funding the Boise School District and the West
So
Ada.
statewide, we might not get to that 300,000 students that we had pre-pandemic,
Exactly.
which would make more funds available, assuming that we still stay on the enrollment formula and they don't take an adjustment.
No, she's implying
No,
that
no.
we'll be covering the loss that
We'll be
those other
covering
schools
the
will be
loss
feeling.
Because of the way that the one provision in the state funding formula works called protection.
Oh, the
which says
3%
Yes.
protection.
If you drop more
5%,
than 3%,
3%,
you're funded to
you're
the
protected.
97%. And that's all self-funded by all the other.
That means all the other districts.
Right, so if you
I-
have.
Those who are
really-
regulated,
You
yeah.
have the big districts having
So,
significant
but
drop in
but
enrollment.
even a 3% drop in West Ada or Boise or Nampa is millions of dollars.
That's right.
Yeah, like Boise thinks they're gonna have 25 less, you know, units. Yeah, it's,
So there's, what
Well-
you're telling us, there's still a lot to be determined. There's a lot of variables here.
what I'm sharing with you is that we continue to be extremely proactive with our legislative officials in the governor's office to make sure they are acutely aware of what has been, what's in place and what has been legislated today.
Yeah. So are there other questions for Lisa Halls? Is it, again, a very comprehensive packet you put together for us, and you really pulled out all the important points for us, and it made it very, very readable.
Thank you.
I will entertain a motion at this time to adopt that budget.
I'll make that motion that we adopt the 2021 budget as presented.
That's the fiscal year 22 budget.
21-22.
21-22.
Now, what is that? 21-22.
Well, no. Okay,
I'll second that.
moved and seconded. Any discussion? Really stumbled on that. Any other discussion?
No, ma'am.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. So I would ask our CFO, Lisa Halls, right back to present to us about the request for qualifications.
Great.
Yeah.
So again, this will require a motion by the board to approve the request to go out for a request for qualifications for architectural and other related professional services. And there were 4 kind of documents included in this. The first is the timeline. What we are, let's see. In the state of Idaho, the purchasing laws, the bidding laws exempt certain things. One of the things that's exempt are professional services. So architectural services, audit services, legal services in Idaho are exempt. However, at the federal level, they are not exempt. Which is why I'm coming before you tonight, because we are going to go out for requests for qualifications using federal ESSER $3.
Yeah.
And you must adhere to the more stringent or more restrictive of the purchasing laws. So the federal purchasing laws are more restrictive. And there will be two different buckets of federal ESSER dollars. Well, our district's ESSER $3, which expires September 30th of 2024, and the IDEA, the special ed ESSER dollars that expire 1 year earlier, September 30th of 2023. And those dollars will be spent on Northside, Kootenai, Farm and Stidwell, and the ESSER $3 are identified at 13 sites. That's all of our school sites as well as the central office in Ponderay. So we project that it will span 2 to 3 years, and that the projects aren't limited to, but will include office space remodeling with the IDEA ESSER dollars. And then the big portion is mechanical ventilation, replacement and retrofit and digital HVAC controls at our 13 sites. Then the request for qualifications are, tell you that we are estimating that in the ESSER $2, it will be about $1.2 million, and then the IDEA ESSER dollars are going to be about $100,000. And there are also a lot of other requirements related to federal construction when we're using federal dollars. First, we have to adhere to the Davis-Bacon wage requirements, which says we must award a contract and audit, actually quite heavily, that they are paying the prevailing wage. And so the prevailing wage then is provided by the Idaho Department of Labor for our county for that category of staff. And that all bidders are going to have to attach the certification form, which also has a lot of other federal parameters that at the state of Idaho level do not exist. And then as the timeline suggests that we would publish a notice in early July, and we would ask for the request for qualifications back by the end of July, and that we would, but not necessarily, we'd screen them down and potentially interview 3 prospective requests for qualification applicants and make a decision by the end of August. And this is because it's going to require architectural designs. We're not quite clear if the scope of these projects, then we'd have to send the plans to the state building department and they have to sign off on the plans. And school districts and other public entities in Idaho have this HVAC allowance, and the state of Idaho's building department plan review also could sort of be backed up.
Yeah.
And that much of the HVAC work we would hope would be designed and approved so that we could do next summer.
Okay.
Are there any questions? And this is about 20% of our ESSER $3 that we're allocating.
Right. Gary, did you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. Okay, the largest portion of these funds you said is going to be spent on these HVAC upgrades.
Right, about $1 million.
And there's about a dozen projects that we're considering funding.
I would defer that to our facility director, who's best suited to answer some of the specifics of that. But in general, yes, some much larger than others.
Yeah, there's some really large projects like the gymnasium at Southside Elementary, ventilation there.
Right.
There's no fresh air there.
Right.
I'll highlight the really big ones. Northside Elementary, the gymnasium there has no ventilation. Lake Monterey High School, the main building, currently has no fresh air ventilation. It'll be a full, a replacement to that system. Then there's lots of, like at Northside, there's 3 particular classrooms that have no ventilation. It's replacing the unit ventilator in that room. Right now it's just a ventilator. The new ventilator will have a duct through the wall and bring in fresh air with a fan. So it's 3 or 4 rooms at Northside. It's
So Gary, is there a specific question, or are you just asking for general scope?
Yeah, that was a clarification.
Yeah.
Now comes the
Yeah.
question. You know, will all these, do you anticipate that all these projects are going to be under one contract? Or are we going to have
No.
multiple contractors, including our own
Multiple.
in-district staff?
multiple contracts. There's also other projects
That are part of it.
aren't part of the RFQ that are being done by district staff. Example would be restroom touch-free faucets, soap dispensers, and paper towel dispenser. That's a big project that we're doing in-house, labor in-house on.
Yeah, yeah.
And procuring according to the federal rules. So that's something we're doing in-house. There's also some other ventilation projects we're doing in-house that aren't part of the RFQ that are much smaller in scope.
Yeah. Does
I
that
would-
kind
I
of
would
clear up
say
your
that-
question?
I would think that from the list of projects, Lisa and I were talking about this the other day, with the help of, the architect, the mechanical engineer, the structural engineer, the electrical engineer, there'll be some grouping of projects, definitely. A lot of the controls, like our digital controls that were updated and installed back in 2010 don't meet any of the new internet protocols. So that we can control the ventilation we do have in our buildings, a lot of that needs to be updated. That's in here. So it will probably make sense that, like, the controls update at Hope, Sagal, Farm Stidwell, those are the same manufacturer,
So, like-
and some others. So I would think that that would be served up as one
For example,
project.
you may put, say, the South Side Gymnasium and the North Side Gymnasium, since they're nearly identical projects, under the same contract.
Yeah, and that will absolutely will get the input from the design professionals on those things. But I could definitely see some grouping of projects. I would seriously doubt it'll be all one contract.
Yeah.
Okay.
So at this stage, we are just approving the request for qualifications to go out. And do we need a motion for that? Do we need a motion to approve the schedule as
No,
outlined?
you just need a motion to approve the request for qualification for architectural and other related professional services.
I move that we approve the request for qualification for architectural and other related professional services as presented.
Second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Are there any other questions for either Stanford Halls or Matt with the facility? Nope. So all in favor?
Aye.
None opposed, so that motion passes. Well, that sums up the heart of the meeting. And are there announcements, Superintendent Albertson?
Just very thankful that we could have 3 graduations in person, and that the class of 2021 got a full regular graduation, and they're on their way to be postgraduates in whatever endeavor they have. So I want to thank the board for you that could attend. There were 3 good ceremonies.
Yeah.
So.
And then do we have announcements from administrators? Anna's here, Mr. Miles, who else is back there? Any other, I can't see. No other announcements? Well, meeting is adjourned.